A global romance scam run by a brutal criminal empire built on modern-day slavery results in the single largest asset seizure in U.S. history. We're about to break down exactly how something that starts with a simple online message can spiral into a multi-billion-dollar criminal conspiracy that spans the entire globe.
$15 billion. You really have to let that number sink in. This isn't a company's valuation on paper. This is the value of assets seized entirely in Bitcoin from a single criminal bust. It is, without a doubt, the largest forfeiture action in the history of the United States, a truly staggering fortune, all built on a foundation of pure deception and human suffering.
And make no mistake, this was not some routine bust. When the director of the FBI himself comes out and calls it one of the largest in history, you know this is something different. That single quote really sets the stage, right? It tells you just how massive, how serious, and how unprecedented this criminal network really was.
So that brings us to the big question, the one we're going to unpack here. How on earth does a scam that usually starts with a friendly hello on a dating app blow up into a $15 billion international crime story? And what does it have to do with modern slavery and the biggest crypto seizure we've ever seen? That is the incredibly complex web we're about to untangle.
You know, to really get the full picture, we're going to start at the end. We're going to begin with the climax of the whole story. That massive, coordinated international operation that finally brought this whole criminal empire crashing down.
The day it all went public was October 14th, 2025. This is the day the world was officially introduced to the man at the very top of this pyramid, Chen Zi. As the chairman of something called the Prince Group, he had this image of a powerful, legitimate international businessman. But that indictment from the DOJ, it absolutely shattered that facade, revealing the pure criminality hiding just beneath the surface.
And this wasn't just one agency acting alone. No, this was a full-scale, coordinated financial takedown. So while the DOJ was handling the criminal charges, you had the U.S. Treasury and the UK's Foreign Office working together to hammer the network with sanctions. We're talking 146 different people and companies all connected to this thing. And then they made a huge move, designating the financial firm Huion Group as a primary money laundering concern, which basically cuts it off from the entire global financial system. It was nothing short of economic warfare.
So how did this group get its hands on so much money? Well, the answer is in the psychological machine that powered the entire operation. It goes by a pretty disturbing name, and that name tells you everything you need to know about how it works: pig butchering. The original name, Sha Zhu Pan. It just reveals this cold, calculated, predatory mindset. The victims, you see, are the pigs. The scammers methodically fatten them up, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for months, building what feels like a real, genuine friendship or even a romance. And it's only after that deep bond of trust is formed that they move in for the slaughter, convincing the victim to drain their life savings into a fake investment and then just disappearing with every last cent.
The scam itself really plays out in 3 stages. First, there's the long game, building trust. This is not a quick hit. They become a part of the victim's daily life, their confidant. Then, stage 2. They casually introduce this amazing can't-miss crypto investment. They'll even let the victim make a small successful withdrawal at the beginning just to prove it's legit. And then comes the final act: isolate and steal. They pressure the victim to pour in more and more and more money, often cutting them off from concerned family, right before they pull the plug and vanish. The money is just gone.
But here is where the story takes an even darker turn. The financial crime, as awful as it is really only one half of the story. You have to ask yourself, who are the people on the other end of the line, typing these messages, running these scams every single day? And the answer? It takes us inside these scam compounds, and it reveals the absolutely horrifying human cost of this whole operation.
This quote from the Assistant Attorney General just cuts right to the bone. This wasn't just some digital crime cooked up in an office. The engine of this $15 billion machine, it wasn't software, it wasn't algorithms. It was human suffering organized at an industrial level. And that's not an exaggeration. A major report from the United Nations estimates that literally hundreds of thousands of people, often smart, educated, multilingual people, are lured by fake job offers and then trafficked. They are held captive, forced to run these scams against their will, and often face torture or worse if they don't meet their targets. The shocking truth is that the scammers themselves are often slaves.
And this right here shows you the chilling split personality of the Prince Group. On the one hand, you had this polished, legitimate corporation. They own skyscrapers, banks, even airlines. But behind that shiny corporate facade was one of Asia's biggest and most brutal criminal organizations, operating out of these fortified, prison-like compounds where enslaved workers were forced to scam the world.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of this. How did one guy, Chen Zi, build such a monstrous and complex criminal empire? And how did it manage to operate right there in plain sight for so long?
This timeline gives you a sense of the meteoric rise and the just as fast fall. It all starts around 2015 when Chen Zi lays the foundation. By 2018, the thing is a money-printing machine, raking in over $30 million a day. A day. Then, in December 2020, something pivotal happens. That $15 billion in Bitcoin gets moved in one massive transaction, one that blockchain investigators would eventually trace. The public collapse starts in October 2025 with that US indictment, and by January 2026, it is all over for Chen Zi.
So how did an operation of this size get away with it? Well, it was really a perfect storm of three things. First, they set up shop in what are called special economic zones, places that are just notorious for having weak regulations and little oversight. Then, they exploited that with massive systemic corruption, basically bribing officials to look the other way. And finally, cryptocurrency was the rocket fuel, allowing them to move and hide billions of dollars across borders with incredible speed and anonymity.
And their money laundering was on another level. The DOJ talked about these methods they called spraying and funneling. So imagine you've got $1 billion in stolen Bitcoin. First, you spray it. You smash that billion into thousands of tiny, random little pieces and send them to thousands of different digital wallets. Then you use this complex automated system to funnel all those tiny streams back together into a brand new, clean wallet. It's a digital magic trick designed to make the money trail completely impossible to follow. So, all of this brings us to the global reckoning. What happens when an empire this powerful, this corrupt, finally gets dragged out into the light? What are the real consequences? The response was really built on three main pillars. First, you had the indictment, which went right for the head, Chen Zi. Second, the historic forfeiture, that $15 billion, which basically starved the criminal organization of its cash. And third, those sweeping sanctions that financially crippled his entire network of 146 accomplices and shell companies.
But to really understand the scale here, you have to look at these numbers. The Prince Group's theft was massive, but all crypto scams combined in 2025 were estimated to be a $17 billion problem. And even that is just a fraction of the $442 billion lost to all online fraud worldwide. This isn't just one bad apple, it's a global epidemic.
And then we get this final, fascinating geopolitical twist to the story. Even though it was the US that led the charge, Chen Zi was ultimately arrested in Cambodia, had his citizenship revoked, and was extradited to China. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the insane jurisdictional challenges and the political chess games that happen when you're trying to prosecute these massive, borderless crimes.
And that's where we have to leave it, because this case was never really just about stolen crypto or financial fraud. It's about this terrifying new reality where high-tech finance, organized crime, and a brutal, modern form of slavery have all merged into one. And it forces us to ask a really tough question. In a world where these things are so tangled together, what is the real price of our digital security, and who, ultimately, is the one paying for it?
So while markets rise and fall, systems like this quietly move billions behind the scenes, hidden from the public, hidden from scrutiny, and sometimes hidden from the law itself. Because in global finance, the most powerful forces are rarely the most visible. And this is just one of the systems used by the unseen elite.